Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook, so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one-size-fits-all protocols, just real answers, deep-rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. Hello, Michelle.
Hello.
We have a special guest, Michelle, who's going to bring some really interesting, beautiful wisdom for all of our listeners today. She is a soma-spiritual mentor, a Reiki Master Teacher, and a Jungian a tarot reader, who's also neurodivergent and has healed a lot of her chronic health conditions. So she's got a really interesting story she's going to share on how she kind of got into this work, and how she's been able to heal a lot of her, chronic health conditions as well as trauma, really. So let's dive in, Michelle.
Trauma. I was very lucky. I had a very idyllic childhood up until my father died very unexpectedly when I was 14. And that was the first of a series of losses and deaths that kind of hit me. Um, and I hadn't even realized how much I was holding on to until people from a cult came along and were like, oh, we know what happens after you die. We have all the answers. And I was young and yearning to reconnect with those that I had lost and heal the traumas that I had been through. And so I spent 6 years in a fundamentalist cult. Time in the cult primed me to then be in an abusive marriage for a number of years. It was intense. And I had 3 little kids. I wasn't sure how to extricate myself. At the same time, my health was in really poor places. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I had other autoimmune diseases. My immune system was in really bad shape. I mean, I would catch everything. I was just sick all the time. I think of those times when I look back at them as very dark. They were just dark times. It ended kind of abruptly when my ex-husband basically tried to run me down with a van on Mother's Day in 2012. It was, I always laugh about it now, not about the situation, but the fact that it took something so big to get me to move. I was like, yep, that's what it took. I tend to be a little slow and picking up on the subtleties. So, the universe has to give me the big stuff. But that launched me back on a healing journey. It launched me back to wanting to understand why when I went through a tough day with dealing with my ex-husband, I would be in more pain.
Mhm.
Why, I would find it harder and harder to push through, depression and anxiety that I'd used to been able to push through.
Mhm.
And so somebody mentioned in passing Reiki to me. It was literally just one of those random things, and my ears went, what's Reiki? And so I then did a deep dive, and it sounded so beneficial, so benign. I was like, there's nothing that's going to hurt me here, and I have a lot to possibly gain.
Mhm.
So I did an online program, and I didn't really feel super connected that way. So then I found an amazing local woman and did a year-long apprenticeship. And so it was a deep dive into emotions, into energy centers, into how energy interplays with emotions. It was really incredible. And that was the beginning of me kind of crawling back to me, because that's what had gotten lost in all this. It was me. I lost touch with who I was inside. Um, so modality by modality, I kind of came back to it. And then eventually I realized that not only did I enjoy the Reiki for myself, I really wanted to expand and start sharing it with others and start teaching it, which has been amazing. Teaching Reiki is truly one of my heart joys. I have a new class starting soon, and I've been preparing and getting all excited about it. But what has happened is that I'm able now to hold space for people in such a different way because of all I have been through. It helps me. Um, oh, I didn't even get into my mentorship. The mentorship kind of delved out of doing the Reiki. I found myself giving advice. I found myself listening to people. I found myself, just like I said, holding space and letting people be themselves in front of me, which for a lot of people, it's the first time they have somebody who can just witness them without judgment.
Mhm.
So then I realized that I wanted to do more of that. So that's kind of what I've been bringing in the past few years is more of this. I call it soma-spiritual, because what I do is I use the energy, but I also help people come back into their bodies, because I believe that the universe communicates to us through our intuition, and our intuition communicates to us often through our bodies.
Mhm.
And I love helping people learn to kind of follow that little pathway down and really get those messages that their inner wisdom is, really trying to direct them to. So that's kind of the short version of what, and the Jungian tarot. That has been born out of the work of Carl Jung. It is a deep dive into the shadow side, into that part of self that we tend to not want to look at, those
Mhm.
maladaptations, those, wounded bits.
Mhm.
In there, through my tarot work, we examine it and we extract the wisdom, because there's always wisdom in the wound. You just have to, again, feel safe in your body, feel safe in your energy, and sit with it. So that's kind of an overview of what I do.
Wisdom in the wound. I like that. But that's a tricky one though, because I feel like,
Mm,
I know from many, many people's healing experience, true healing. I mean, you can feel better along your journey, but I feel like that true little like piece that's missing is usually that shadow work in some regards, whether people call it different kinds of things, but addressing yourself, addressing those past things that no longer serve you or don't serve you that you don't realize are kind of a conscious thing you do every day.
yeah.
So, the
It's funny,
engine
when I
of the
was
brain.
when I was first starting my shadow work journey, there was one point, and I've guided a number of clients to the same point, where it's like you look at all these maladaptations, these ways you avoid looking at the wound, and you're like, am I in there? Like, am I just a series of maladaptations? Am I just, doing all this dancing, or, where am I in the wound? And it is that sense of reclamation is so powerful.
I think, for you, you've gone through so much, right? And where did you feel like if somebody's maybe in those spots too, like what were the first few things you did to kind of reclaim, your mind, your body, your health?
Learning to be still enough to meditate in my own style. I am not one of those people, again, with the neurodivergence, cannot empty my brain. Like that is, I've come to accept that that is rarely happens. But what I have learned to do is pick a point in time, a focal point, and just keep bringing my brain back to that, back to that, back to that. That I can do. And doing that helped me drop into my body. Dropping into my body helped me to actually feel kind of where my energy was, where are my boundaries, where do I fill myself out, and where am I constricted. And those were the first things that kind of were the clues, like, all right, I feel constriction in my energy field here. What does that mean? You need getting curious, getting very curious, asking the questions without judgment. And that can be the tricky part, because we want to judge ourselves. We're really
Mhm.
good at it. But when you're able to ask those questions, get really curious, and accept the answer is just the answer. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just the answer. And move forward with those little clues, I think, are the first big steps.
Yeah, that's a hard one for people. I think I talk about this on so many podcasts, but it's probably because it comes up with many clients. It's like there has to be another way. That's too easy. Just sitting with myself, just being in tune with my body, which I would love for you to explore what that means for somebody that maybe doesn't understand what dropping into my body, feeling
Mm,
energy, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But people think we have to do more instead of just being more, right? So if somebody is maybe a little newer to what
Mhm.
dropping in your body feel, please explore that a little bit with us.
Well, it can mean different things to everybody. For me, when I'm saying dropping into my body, it's I become incredibly aware of my skin suit. Basically, feel I'll feel the chair under me. I'll put my feet firmly on the ground. I'll perhaps even do some bilateral stimulation so I can actually feel where my body ends. Because when you're out of regulation, when you're in trauma, you lose sense of yourself, literally, physically lose sense of yourself. So
Mhm.
kind of tapping myself is I find very helpful. So it's literally, it sounds so simple, but it is not. It's literally embodying every inch of who I am physically at that moment. And it can be challenging for people. I know it was for me for many years if there are pain issues. It's like my body's not a safe place. I'm not dropping into my body.
Mhm.
All I have ever found to work through that, if you want to do this work, is breath work. Breath work has been key for me in terms of breathing through my pain. That is the most effective technique I personally have found when you're learning to drop into your body and you're
Mhm.
like, you meet that resistance and however it may present.
I'm glad you brought up breath work. This comes up a lot, and I feel like if I were me listening, hearing this constantly during my chronic health, autoimmune journey, I'd be like, breath work, meh. And then, if I heard it a second time, I'd be like, fine. And like third, fourth, fifth time, I'd be like, okay, there's something to this because everybody keeps bringing it up that it's that important. Okay, I'll try it. And now I do breath work, because I understand the importance. But, it's something that people are like, breath work. That seems so simple, but it can be so powerful. Is there a specific kind of breath work you enjoy? Do you follow a certain way of doing it, or more just your own kind of
I've
method?
been to a number of classes with different teachers that are, really gifted in their breathwork gifting. I mean, it is beautiful. For me, I just kind of pull from some different techniques that I've learned. I know for me, for pain, I do box breathing, which is,
Mhm.
4 in, pause, four in, pause, 4 out, pause,
Mhm.
and you just keep going. So you make a little box. It's, brilliant.
It is.
I have found that to be very helpful for me for my pain issues. I do keep it. I have done like the deeper stuff, the holotropic, which is really you get into a whole different mental state. It's really quite fascinating. But I keep it simple for daily daily use because if it's not simple, I'm not going to do it.
Oh, girl, me too. Yeah, box breathing is one of my favorites because, I mean, in a very logical sense, like it just shifts your body from this sympathetic fight or flight to this parasympathetic, state and quickly. And it takes 10, 15, 30 seconds if, it doesn't have to be an hour-long breathwork session. So that's my favorite way when a client, is working. It's like, hey, oh, you don't have time? You have 15 seconds in your day. I can promise you that. If not, we have a lot more mindset work we gotta really work on here. Stop, breathe, get in tune with your body. How are you feeling? And you're like, oh wow, my shoulders have been really up in my ears all day. Oh wow, my jaw is really clenched.
Mhm.
It's like you start becoming a little bit more in tune, but you lose that intuition when we're in this constant state of stress, right?
Yeah.
So, I know you mentioned this link between kind of trauma, chronic pain, stress, things like that. I would love for you to explore a little bit more on how that work really led to what you do now and like that healing journey a little bit more.
It's interesting. I came out of my marriage very unwhole, put it that way. I was missing pieces of me, which were there, but shrouded in trauma, in pain, in not looking.
Hmm.
Um, and learning to kind of, like you said, breathe through it, turn to these wounds.
Hmm.
It, I resisted it. Like you were saying them, heard these things a few times, like drop into your body. My body's not a safe place. I would go back and forth until finally I really had to make a conscious choice to sit with it and to get still. Again, with the ADHD, getting still is,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not the
you gotta
easiest
train
thing.
yourself.
Yeah, it's literally, so I was working against my own wiring in many ways, but the promise seemed so profound. And I saw these people who had said they'd been there, these people that have done the breath work, that have done the somatic healing, and the way they hold themselves, the way they interact with the world. I'm like, they're onto something. So I took the chance and I started practicing some of these things. And it wasn't easy and it was stop and go. There were times I'd be like, yep, this is great. I'm flowing along. This is wonderful. And then there would be, weeks where I'd be like, I'm not doing anything. Nope. And healing is like that. It's nonlinear. But I knew that the promise of not being in constant pain, of not being constantly tense and out of regulation, was worth picking away at it. I
Yep.
tend to be a little stubborn, so that helped. But once I was on the other side of even just a few things, like, okay, I've noticed my knee doesn't bother me as much anymore, or wow, I have slept through the night the past 4 nights. Once I started getting these little wins, it just instilled in me this confidence that this is it, this is it. And I'm the sort of person, I love to teach, I love to share my stories. So the first thing I did when I got to a stable place where I could honestly look at my progress and say, yes, I have done some healing work, was to turn and see who was back behind me in the same spot, and it's been like that this whole time. The more I learn, the more I turn back to those who were where I was, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And it affirms my own knowledge. It affirms my inner knowing that this is the right way. When you see it blossom for other people, it really does as much for me as it does for them. I'm convinced of it.
It's, I think, one of the greatest gifts is to find passion and find something you're good at. And, healing other people is so gratifying. It can be a lot sometimes, but it's also,
Boundaries.
I just talked about that on my last podcast, how important boundaries are as especially female business owner.
Oh my goodness. I obviously came out of my marriage with very few boundaries. I was super codependent. Um, And it's probably only in the past 3 to 5 years I can honestly say that I actually have boundaries. And they were pretty clunky and ugly at first. I'd be like, don't do that, Like weren't exactly the loving, kind of boundaries I wanted to set up. But you get there. It was clunky, but I have them now. But it's one of the first things I work on with clients is boundaries, because a lot of times they'll come to me like, my biggest problem is time management. I have no time for spiritual path. And I'll be like, I think it's a boundary issue. I think that it's a time boundary issue. And we delve into that. And it's one of the most important things. And for women business owners, yeah, that just amplifies it.
Oh, yes. That's funny. It just, again, we were chatting about synchronicities before we recorded, and that's another one that just has come up a lot, right? It's how important it is. As somebody who used to have zero, so I understand, and I burnt out. So I can say firsthand, listen to what she's saying. But as somebody who does this really unique kind of tarot and this Reiki and soma-spiritual work, like, how do these specific tools kind of help reconnect people with maybe their intuition, kind of rebuild trust in themselves after something like trauma or change?
That's a great question. I call my Jungian tarot readings inner journey tarot. It's a snapshot. It's an energetic snapshot of where you are on your bigger path. Like, it helps you to orient yourself. And then I find a lot of people are confused where they are. Like, well, what do I do next? I'm feeling this, I'm hearing this, I'm doing this. I don't know what's next on a spiritual sense. And so I feel like getting in touch, we pull the cards, but we talk about what the symbolisms of the cards mean to me. First of all, that's the overriding message, but what does it mean to you? Because that's the key. I can tell you all day long what I see in the card, but what do you see? And I find that is like really helpful for a lot of people, because then they can be like, all right, I know what my next spiritual step is. And then it becomes, well, how do I expand into that? How do I level up? How do I embrace, the next step? And I think that's where the energy piece comes in, where we really, help you get in touch with the energetics, because everything happens on the physical plane, absolutely, but there is an energetic plane. And so I find like getting oriented, getting the energetics in place, and then doing the mindset piece, the shadow work, the examining of the wound. So it's kind of a 3-stage process, but doing that with any particular goal that somebody has seems to really be effective to help them, take those first little baby steps and get a taste of the other side, because that's really the key. You got to get the taste of it to know that it's worth the not insubstantial effort.
I mean, that's true. I think it's hard because people want to be healed right away. And it's like, oh, that once, nope, it didn't work for me. And then they just create
Mhm.
this story about, nope, this stuff just doesn't work for me. So, well, you have to give it enough time to work for you too. And I will say, if somebody has done this work and maybe it hasn't worked, to revisit it again, because who you are when you do it also matters. Um,
Absolutely.
but, if somebody was maybe at the beginning of their journey, trying to reclaim their power again, heal, what's maybe one, two pieces of advice you would tell them?
Again, getting still is so incredibly key. Like that is the foundational piece. But it's also a matter of think back, do a little mental exercise. What brought you greatest joy when you were a child? Where was that spark? That passion that was in you, and what triggered it? And then you kind of bring that knowledge forward and like, well, where is it now? How can I feel like that now? Where is that piece of me? How can I bring that piece of me forward? So say you had a passion for painting when you were a kid and that was your happy place, or reading. Where can I possibly anchor in 15 minutes, just 15 minutes to do that? It's really taking the time to prioritize yourself, which can be so hard. And I think for women, particularly so, because we are a lot of times conditioned to be, the caretakers. But we have to make sure that we are putting ourselves in the driver's seat, making conscious choices. Like, it doesn't have to take all day. Even just little steps on the road will get you further than you might think. It's that consistency.
Yeah. I feel drawn to ask this question, but is there one or two stories that kind of at the front of your brain of transformations when people really were maybe a little skeptical of this or willing and just wanting a different way, the way you work with them and how they transformed?
Absolutely. I'm think of a couple of clients, one in particular, and she'll still tell me, I don't know how any of this works, but it works.
Yeah, I get that a lot with
She's a,
bioenergetic work.
it's
Yep.
great. But my partner is very much a skeptic
Mhm.
about many things. He's very here in this world. We balance each other. um, he during the pandemic shutdown, I think the stress of it all started getting to him, and he started having panic attacks, which he had
Mhm.
never had before in his life. I mean, we went to doctors to make sure that's what it was. I mean, we thought he was having a heart attack.
Mhm.
So it's very visceral, very soma-based panic attacks.
Mhm.
There was one night it was really, really bad. And so I had him lay on the ground. I'm like, do you want me to try Reiki? He's like, anything, just anything. Because,
Mhm.
we'd done some breathing and that certainly helped, but I'm like, all right. And so I did one of the most intense Reiki sessions I think I've ever done. I mean, I broke into a sweat. It was intense. There was a lot of energy flowing. And as I'm doing it, he's like, every time I'd move my hands, he's like, but I can still feel your hands where they were. Why can I still feel your hands? Like at first it kind of freaked him out. And then he's like leaning into it. And every step I went down his body, his heart rate went down because we were monitoring it. And every moment that he stayed still and allowed the energy to just diffuse and the Reiki to flow, he, felt better. And to this day, he's another one that'll say, I don't know what you do, but you know what you're doing. Whatever you're doing, you're good at it. And it's really funny because I think it's helped me in many ways in our relationship because now I know he gets it as much as he possibly can.
Mhm.
Whereas before, I think I thought he was kind of humoring me, like, okay, honey, sure you do Reiki. And now he's just like, oh no, you do Reiki. So
Mhm.
it was a lot of fun. That was a really fun experience for me. Not so
Oh,
much.
yes. Wow. No, but sometimes I mean, I hate to say this, sometimes you need to be hit on the head with a bat to take your health seriously. As much as I
Absolutely.
say that, but and it's only then that I feel like people are really open to other modalities because they tried all the things and they haven't worked, or they've only gotten them from A to B, not B to C, right? And so, especially men, which is fine, they tend to be a little more skeptical, more logical, and I
Mhm.
know My husband, when I got into bioenergetic bioresonance work, was like, what the hell? He's like, what are you're going to change your whole practice into this? He's like, do you know what you're doing? I was like, yes. It was like the biggest intuitive hit I've ever had, where I was like, this is the next step for me and my company and women, or really collective, more people in general. And he
Mhm.
remember scanning him, and he was like, okay, so this is moving energy in real time. Okay. And like he was going through something, and literally it was crazy how much better he felt right away. The next day, certain symptoms completely disappeared. Like, I mean, and I've just been blowing people's mind, but now he's like, can you do a scan on me? Like, and now he'll come with a problem like, can you do it? Same with probably Reiki. It's like, I know
Mhm.
this can help now, but they needed that 3D belief.
Yep.
And that's okay. I think it comes up in so many people's calls where it's literally like, I don't know what you do. I don't get it, but it works. Like, and it's like, we don't have to always understand, but just know there are these beautiful healing modalities out there. So wherever you are, maybe you're stuck in this trauma loop, maybe you're stuck in this chronic disease loop, maybe you're stuck in just feeling like you're not living your most abundant, clear life, whatever it might be. Reiki's incredible. Reiki doesn't work for I don't want to say it doesn't work, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. That's fine. Bioenergetic work works for everybody, but it might not be your cup of tea. Same with tarot, all these different things. But when you find that thing that works, it's amazing. And you're just open to it, And so I love having people come on and share all these beautiful different modalities. And I love that you mix them all together. It's not just Reiki, it's also, all these other, modalities kind of tied into one.
My journey was so circuitous and diffuse and meandering that I picked up so many modalities that really worked. I was like, oh no, they all need to be woven. They all bring some wisdom. But it is fun. I enjoy it a lot. Just being able to pull from all these different aspects and make it into a cohesive journey for somebody.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I really appreciate you coming on here, sharing your wisdom, sharing all the stories. I'd love to know where people can find you. Yeah.
My main platform at the moment is either Facebook or LinkedIn. Either one works, but probably a little more frequently on Facebook. Michelle Manley, and it's my face as the profile picture, so that's how to find me. And MichelleMmanley.com/home is my landing page that tells a little bit more about my different offerings and what I do. And I'm also on Instagram as Mystic Healing Alchemy, which is my business name.
Ooh. I will put those links down in the show notes so that way you can go find her. And if you guys thought this was really insightful, really helpful, I would love to know, either messaging us, just letting us know that really helped. I always love those insights from people. Or if you want to leave a review, that is very helpful because it helps us just reach more people as well. And other than that, thank you so much, Michelle, for being here, and I'll catch you guys on the next show.